Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Seat Arosa car. The Seat Arosa 6H was presented in 1997 at the Geneva Motor Show. A year later, after several stylistic changes, a twin design of the car, the Volkswagen Lupo, hit the market. Interestingly, both cars were based on a shortened floor pan of the Polo/Ibiza models. In 2000, the Arosa engine offer was supplemented with a 100 horsepower, 1.4L 16 volts petrol unit and a 75 horsepower, 3-cylinder TDI diesel engine. At the same time, the design was modernized. The front of the car became slightly similar to the new Ibiza. The headlights, radiator grille, and bumper were changed. In the rear part of the body, only the lights and bumper were remodeled. However, the most modifications can be found in the interior, where the appearance of the entire dashboard was completely refreshed. As sales of the Arosa were not going very well, the car was withdrawn from production in 2004. Its direct successor, the Me, based on the Volkswagen Up and presented only in 2012, is also not very popular, which cannot be said about its German and Czech counterparts. In the Seat Arosa, you will find only 5 engine versions. Of course, for most users, the basic 50 horsepower 1.0-liter engine will be enough. Driving slowly in a car with such a petrol unit under the hood, you will easily manage to use about 6 Li/100 kilometers in the city. However, if you constantly rev the engine up, you can reach even 10 L/100 kilometers. Low fuel consumption is not able to compensate for poor flexibility and a weak sprint to 100 kilometers per hour, which takes as much as 17.4 s. The 60 horsepower 1.4-liter engine is slightly more powerful, burning an average of 2 L/100 kilometers more, but its dynamics also leave much to be desired. The first 100 appears on the speedometer only after 14.1 seconds. The 16-valve version accelerates much better. The sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour for the 100 horsepower version is a matter of 9.8 seconds. Unfortunately, in this case, you have to accept fuel consumption in city traffic at the level of 10 L/100 kilometers. There is another problem. There are very few Seat Arosa models with the 1.4L 16 volts engine on the European market. There are also diesels on offer. 1.7 SDI is an older design that will be satisfied with 6 L/100 kilometers in city driving. The more modern diesel engine uses about 1 L/100 kilometers less. Acceleration. In both cases, don't count on lightning performance. 1.4 TDI accelerates the small seat to the first 100 in 12.1 seconds, and the 1.7 SDI version needs 16.8 seconds. Apart from that, neither of the engines is characterized by high work culture. They work like tractors. Faults. Petrol engines are generally durable and do not cause major problems during use, although oil leaks do occur with higher mileage. Seat Arosa users with petrol engines also complain about increased oil consumption. The 1.4-liter engine also has problems with freezing vents. Apart from that, it is hard to find fault with anything. In the case of diesels, the SDI engine lasts much longer, while old cars with the TDI engine struggle with equipment failures. Regardless of the version, the drive is always transferred to the front wheels via a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 4-speed automatic gearbox. The front suspension of the Arosa uses McPherson struts and a torsion beam at the rear. Safety? In the Euro NCAP crash tests, the small seat, like its twin, the Volkswagen Lupo, received a good result of 4 stars. Before buying an Arosa, you should first pay attention to how the power steering works. If it disappears during a test drive, there are probably leaks in the system. Another weak point of the car are the rubber covers of the drive joints. Their damage, as you might guess, quickly ends in a failure of the joints themselves. Electrics are also prone to failure. The most common failures are central locking, immobilizer, alternator, and electric windows. These are typical electrical faults in cars of this age. Operation is further complicated by rusty contacts. As small cars are usually sold in showrooms for reasonable prices, you can't count on good quality of interior materials. The Seat Arosa has never been cheap, and yet the manufacturer has saved money on the finish. It wasn't that bad for the first few years of use, but when the car has served its time, the plastics loosen and start to creak unpleasantly. Some of them even crack. The door handles, both inside and outside, are also not very durable. In addition, the window seals often loosen. The excellent anti-corrosion protection deserves praise. The rusty models are cars that were poorly repaired after accidents. The suspension is equally solid, although in more worn-out models most of its elements will have to be replaced, especially the two delicate shock absorbers. There were no queues in showrooms for the Seat Arosa. Despite this, there are quite a few copies on the used car market. Who will like this small German-Spanish hatchback? First of all, people looking for a car that is cheap to buy and use. You also have to appreciate the solidity of the construction. Failures are rather rare here. However, if something does fail, the repair will be easy and cheap. Thanks to its small size, the car feels like a fish in water in the city. Disadvantages? The most annoying things are poor quality materials used for the interior and poor soundproofing, sluggish engines, unattractive design, and a too cramped interior. I do not recommend taking the Seat Arosa for longer trips. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.